the spirit communication isn't as it's depicted to be on TV or in films, where it's shown as being as obvious as a smack in the face with a baseball bat. In truth, spirit communication varies depending on the medium, but also depends on the spirit person as well. Because spirit will communicate in different ways. Sometimes the communication is really subtle, sometimes it's like playing charades, sometimes it's symbolic, sometimes it's very random, and sometimes it can be literal. But one thing you have to remember is that the spirit world are not physical. Your spirit family don't have a physical voice, they don't have that voice box which we use to communicate with each other, and therefore the medium has to interpret what's being placed in the mind of the medium, whether it be a vision, a sound, a feeling, whatever it might be. So it's not as clear as some people might like, because some people do say, well, if it's that clear, why can't they give me a name or a place or a password and all those things? And sometimes that does happen. You know, many of us mediums are able to give relevant names, some are able to give addresses. It just depends on the spirit person. But again, remember that your spirit family have to find another way to communicate, because again, they don't have the physicality that we have as humans. And just to give you an example of how subtle it can be or how symbolic it can be, let me talk about a reading I did a couple of weeks ago with a young girl, and her spirit family had stepped forward and they were giving me evidence to provide that, to show that it was them. And then as I looked up at the wall beside us, there was a picture in a frame, and it was a picture of a fairy and had some leaves in the background. But as I looked at this picture, all of a sudden I saw Jabba the Hutt. Yes, very random, I know. Now, I know that Jabba the Hutt is associated with Star Wars, but to be honest, I've never watched a Star Wars film. Yes, shock horror. Never have, was never into Star Wars or Star Trek, anything like that. But I knew that looking at Jabba the Hutt, there was something here in relation to Star Wars. But I also have to say, I almost pushed it aside out of my mind, because I thought that's far too random. There's far too much of a random thing to give. And as mediums, we have to learn to trust what we are receiving from spirit. And it's not up to us to judge the information. It's not meant to make sense to us, it's meant to make sense to our clients. So I did say it, I said, look, as I'm looking at that picture, I'm seeing Jabba the Hutt, which I know is related to Star Wars in some kind of way. Can you understand it? And the young girl said, yes, I know exactly what that is. That's related to my son, who is Star Wars mad, Star Wars everything that he has. And so I know that was the spirit world's way of acknowledging their family member, this young boy that is here, letting me know they're looking after him from the spirit world, is alright, but they've got their eye on him. So you see, it's not always as clear cut as maybe a spirit person just saying to me, Star Wars. Because some people will say, why can't I have just said to you, Star Wars? But in that case, it was up to that spirit person how they wanted to get me to talk about Star Wars. And they know that if I had said Jabba the Hutt, they knew where my mind would go with that. They knew my mind would go to the Star Wars films. Although I've never watched a Star Wars film, I'm not stupid enough to not to know what Jabba the Hutt is associated with. So that's just an example of how spirit can communicate with us. So again, it can be random. It's not always as clear cut as people want to make it out to be. So I hope that helps you to understand.